Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative Podcast. It's the podcast where we have digital discussions in the worlds of social media, sports, pop culture, music, and everything really. As always, I'm your host, Peter Remoliotis. On Twitter, I go as PD Beats. Really excited for this interview because I am speaking to the guitarist of a band from Denmark, New Politics. We're with Søren Hansen. Søren, welcome to Popternative.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Icebreaker question. I mean, we talked about it a little bit before we started recording, but talk a little bit about when the band kind of started, and talk a little bit about some of the goals in terms of the sounds that New Politics wanted to establish early on.
Yeah. So we started. David and I met in Denmark. I would say a few years before we formed New Politics, and we wanted to actually just write songs for other people. And it's a kind of a funny story now that I think of it. So we got a hold of this list of people needing songs, and it was like Katy Perry and stuff. And we were pretty cocky, so we were like, "Sure, we're gonna write some songs for these guys." We sent some songs to. It was EMI Germany or something like that. It was in Germany, and we got a letter back from Denmark, from one of the publishing companies in Denmark, and it was kind of rude. Because we had sent some MP3 files along and stuff, and they were talking. He was more focused on the fact that we don't download stuff, send in CDs, and then I think I just had it. Maybe I was like one of those. I was like at the point where I was like about to turn into a bitter musician, which is not really my personality. But I just had a day, and I just saw red. And David hadn't arrived at the studio yet, so I sent a letter back to him, and I was like, "Listen. This is ridiculous. We live in, I guess it's 2009. We live in 2009 and everybody has internet and we're writing songs and you're going to say that you're not going to listen to our songs because they were attached as MP3 files. That's stupid." And I said I think I started talking about like, you probably got your job because you have a really nice mobile phone or like a PDA or something. I kind of went out there, and David arrived at the studio and he saw the email and he was like, and then that day we wrote a song where I was kind of playing some rock and roll guitar and screaming in the chorus, and David was doing his thing, and it ended up becoming the first New Politics song. So it started by a complete coincidence, and we were like, what, David, he was the one saying it, dude, we actually have a band, this feels like a sound. And that's what happened. So every song, like our first single in America was called Yeah Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that song is pretty much that concept. And then I guess that's what was the foundation of New Politics. I could sing higher than him, so I did that. And he could sing faster than me because he doesn't have an accent. His dad is American. And so we ended up, that was the foundation.
That's awesome. And, years later, I mean, very successful band. I mean, over I think Harlem has 7.6 million views on the music video on YouTube. Like, it's insane. The Spotify hits. It's like it's nuts and everything. What do you think about the sound of New Politics that you think hits stride with an audience? Is it the mix of the pop, the rock, the little bit of kind of the urban? Like, what do you think people like about New Politics from your perspective?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think people maybe were drawn to the fact that we would write a happy song. And nobody was doing that. And then I think we kind of brought that 90s rock and roll guitar back to radio because nobody was doing that at that time. So maybe that was something that people thought, oh, this is fun to listen to. And it's a happy song. We are happy people. Every time we try to hide it behind a sad song, I think when you see us live, it comes across that we are happy people and we like to have fun. So maybe it was the right thing. The funny thing about especially Harlem that very much defined who we are is that we had already written the album, and our managers said, "Hey guys, you have another 14 days to work on songs if you want," and then we wrote Harlem. So without that, I think we would probably have been back in Denmark now and nothing would have happened to the band. So we were having fun and we just did it, let's just see what happens. And usually most good things in life happens like that.
Oh, absolutely. Now, this is, so you have to understand something, sort of like when I booked this interview, this is the segment of the show I was the most excited to talk about because like I'm from Canada, hockey, huge part, you know what I mean? Video games though is huge. Video games is important. So I think you know what I'm about to ask, you know what I mean? So one of the biggest things is I discovered so many bands from the NHL video game soundtracks, the EA Sports soundtracks. I mean, they've done an amazing job. I've discovered some of my favorite bands from that. One band that you guys had the privilege of having more than one song on an NHL soundtrack. Harlem was on NHL 14, and I believe West End Kids was on NHL 16. But so many people are going to not know about New Politics, and because of this video game, discover your band. Like, isn't that crazy to think?
I think that's so cool. And it's one of those things that the way our society is moving, it's one of the really cool things. And I think music is healthier than ever. You know, you're talking about back in the day where you sold so many records and this and that. But nowadays, it's just a different outlet. And I think people are more exposed to music now than ever. And I love the idea of video games because it creates something that makes you enjoy the game more, and you're listening without really listening, and you become super familiar with these songs. And it doesn't have to be a really known band. It could be anything. But if you love the music, you're not going to judge it for how many records it sold. And I think that's super, super cool.
I mean, you could also see, I just want to know, like, you know, they put Harlem on NHL 14. What were kind of the reactions from the band when you found out about that? But then what were the reactions when 2 years later on 16, they use another song of New Politics? Because I found that awesome, too.
Yeah, it's been amazing. We had Need for Speed. We had one of our songs in that. We had The Sims. We had that one too. We had 3 songs in The Sims. So we've tried a bunch. We had to sing every word in a different language because it's Simlish. But when it comes to what I like, maybe it's because sorry.
No, that's awesome.
Maybe it's because I'm a guy and I used to go to shows and I was in the mosh pits and all that stuff. I love sports games because I feel like it brings an energy to the game, and that we can be a part of that is super, super cool. So yeah.
No, like Harlem, I remember like some people I saw West End Kids or Kids in the West End. What's the official name of the song?
West End Kids.
West End Kids. Okay, so I said right.
Yeah.
So I would go, if you go see on like YouTube, and if you go to the like official video for that song on your YouTube page, you'll see some of the comments, people saying like, oh, this was in NHL 16. Like, people reference the video game. You know what I mean?
Totally. I love it, man. That's an honor, you know. That's super, super cool. Yeah, EA games, I think. They've been so good to us. They've done a lot of stuff for us.
But it's funny how you wouldn't even think about that like 5-10 years ago, how people are finding music. Like, this is before Spotify, right? This is before iTunes. I would find bands for coming home from school playing a video game and having like the soundtrack.
Dude, I remember I was a kid, but I remember Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Yes.
I mean,
I discovered Melancholy. Do you remember Melancholy? I discovered Melancholy through that.
Yeah. That's amazing. And what is a Goldfinger and even Papa Roach and all that stuff?
Dude, all that stuff.
They got famous from that stuff. They got famous from, a lot of it came from Tony Hawk. I mean, how cool is that?
And I think what's cool about the NHL too is they had moments where they used a lot of heavier music when the NFL used a lot of heavy music too. Like Under Oath was used in a Madden game, which is like, you think about it, you're like, that's crazy.
I know. It's so weird, but it just works. And it's super cool. It's like kind of music without, you don't have the boundaries of like, you know, when you put on Under Oath that you're going to listen to some heavy music. But when you're playing a video game, you don't think about that. It's just, that's just the music. And you like it because you're doing your thing, and it's like it gives you energy for the game. No, I think it's super cool.
Absolutely. So New Politics have a lot of songs, significant songs, but a song that people know a lot about is Harlem, of course. That is a song that people, and that's a song too where I've been like, shopping at the local mall, and it's like on the radio, it's like playing in the store, you know what I mean? And like that type of thing. Or I go to Hot Topic and it's playing in the store. Have you ever had any like cool encounters of that where like someone's listening to your song or it comes up on the radio? Have you ever walked into, you know, a club or a bar or like a store and your song was ever on the radio? You're like, wow, this is like kind of cool. Like this is me playing.
Yeah. You know what is really funny? When that happens, you kind of don't know how to react to it because it's weird too, and you don't really want to listen to your own music. so it's a little bit more like turn it off, but it's also like it feels good. But we did try something really funny that's like way not cool, and that was once we were driving. This was when we were on our first record. We were driving, and suddenly we hear our first single for the first time on the radio, and we all go, "Oh my God!" We're sitting in the van. We're like, yeah, they're playing our song. I'm turning it up. Then they played the next song on the record right after. And we were like, oh my God. And then they played the next one. And then we were like, oh shit, it's an iPod.
So no one realized that.
No one realized we were all just rocking out to the fact that we were on the radio.
Oh my God!
I know it's so good. Every time I think about that, it's
but
so
no
hilarious.
one, but no one clued in. Like after the second song, like, are you sure? Like, what radio station is this? Like, who would have our record?
Yeah, but those stations, it was like one of those like old vans, you know, like it didn't say any of the station names or anything. So I think we were just so excited. So after the second song, we were kind of like, okay, something is wrong.
Oh, that's amazing. I want to also know, because you guys are from Denmark, and you know you're touring a lot. Maybe you're not are you frequently in Denmark?
No, it's weird.
Yeah. So what's the scene?
Yeah.
What's the scene like in Denmark that you know?
I think the music scene is really good there. I think it's almost like, do you know the band's Mew?
Yeah.
And the band Mew has a lot. There's a lot of Scandinavian music in that realm. Excuse me. There's a very, very healthy music scene, and a lot of American bands are doing really well in and you know, any international band, I should say. Doesn't matter where they're from.
But you were about to say though, once you got signed.
Yeah, once we got signed, our record deal was in the States, so we kind of just never came back to Denmark for. You know, when we did a few European tours, we would sneak in a show, but honestly, we would mainly play for friends and whoever had heard us on radio, but we were never ever successful in Denmark, which is really weird.
Okay, and you mentioned like the story about how like the band started. It was an awesome story, but specifically about getting signed, what was kind of factors involved with you getting signed to your label?
How that happened, it was kind of crazy. So David was a street breakdancer in Denmark. He was already quite known in Denmark, and he had another musical project years before with a girl who was also a breakdancer, but nothing really happened. But he always stayed in touch with this one guy who used to work for Island Def Jam. Josh Sarubin, his name is, and he's a sweetheart. He loved to look at Danish girls, so that was like pretty much what they would be talking about. And he had this weird crush on Denmark. You know, he always thought it was a fascinating country. So he stayed in touch with David randomly, like every third month or something. David would send him a text saying, you know, how are you doing, blah blah blah, kind of thing. And when we had a product for this band that we had created, David sent the stuff to him and he liked it, and he at that point was not working at a label, so he just sent it to all his friends because they all know each other in New York, and we ended up in a bidding war between some major labels, and we were like, this is crazy. So everything just happened within 5 months of us making a band. We had a record deal.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah. We had played 8 shows before we had a record deal. We couldn't play, like literally. First time I ever stood up holding a guitar was our first gig.
That's amazing.
It's a funny story.
So, you know, a couple more questions, then we'll wrap up. But cool question I have now. It's a two-part question. I want to know we'll start with more of the, you know, positive, happy. What is the best part about being a musician in New Politics? And then I want to know in general, what is the hardest thing, in your opinion, about being a musician?
Okay. Good questions. The best part is that you get to do something that you love. I was talking to my friend's girlfriend. We were all having a dinner a few days ago, and she said she's a school teacher. She said I love my job, but I really love when I'm not working. And I thought, you know what? I really love it all. When I'm not working on New Politics, I will be working on New Politics by trying to write a song, because it's what I love. It's the thing I do. The best part is that you get to do something you love. You get to play for people. You wrote these songs, a lot of them in a bedroom, and people sing along to the words and they resonate with your lyrics. That's wild.
Yeah.
Wild. You change people's lives. Beautiful thing, and it's so touching. The hardest part would be that it's not as easy as you think. It's not all fun and games. Touring is very hard, and a lot of times there's a certain amount of pressure, yet you have to write a song that's better and better and better, and there's no certainty in anything. It's a roller coaster ride. And once if you're a creative individual, I'm sure you are too, because you're doing creative things, you know that you react personally to how your career, your passion is moving. So when it goes down, you go down. When it goes up, you go up. And that's a tricky thing to navigate. So I would say the hardest thing about being a musician is that you don't necessarily have any control over your emotions, because you're so touched and attached to what you're doing. You don't have any spare time, it's hard.
I agree. No, I agree too. And it's funny too, because, a lot of bands, it starts off, they have their day jobs. They want to be able to quit their day jobs and do it full time, but it's not possible in many circumstances. And then the hardest thing about kind of getting to that and doing that dream come true of touring and doing that is making sure you put the time in, right? Like you're working like your 9-to-5 job, right? But then you come home late, but you need to find the time to work on the music stuff as well.
Yeah, true. I've done that for many, many years. I see a lot of my friends. I live in Nashville. That's nothing but that here, and they're so talented. And you also realize that there's just this weird thing that has to happen by accident or coincidence or whatever. And that just doesn't happen to everybody. But it does happen to somebody. And because of that dream inside of you is never going to die. That's also very, very hard.
No, absolutely. No, for sure. Well, Søren, thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me. That was super cool.
No, absolutely. Plug away. Where can people follow the band? What's happening with the band lately? Where could they follow you guys on social media? The stage is yours.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are on Instagram, New Politics, and we are on Twitter, New Politics. One of them is New Politics Rock. I don't remember which one, because I just look up New Politics. And we're going on tour now. We're doing a small intimate tour where it's pretty much just all what the fans want to hear. We're playing in the middle of the audience. Part of the show is going to be acoustic in the middle of the audience. Everybody gets to draw on our first backdrop we ever brought with us to America. Our first backdrop that we got made for us. First tour ever in America. Everybody gets to draw on it. They can draw whatever they want, doesn't matter. And then afterwards, we'll make something really special out of that. So this is a small fan tour before we head to the studio to write our 5th record.
Wow, that is amazing, man. Well, seriously, I wish you or the band all the best, man.
Thanks, man, and hope to see you again. This was super, super cool.
No,
Thanks
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for the previous video episodes, iTunes, Spotify for the audio-only episodes. Be sure to listen to New Politics, and if they happen to be in your neck of the woods, go catch them on tour, because it's a very fun, exciting band live. And until next time, this is Søren Hansen and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.